I on? I don't hear this. Can you hear me now? I hear it. Okay. All right, we are in Matthew chapter 10, and we are dealing with Jesus sending out the apostles to go out and teach. And this is also in Mark the 6th chapter, 7 through 13, and Luke 9, 1 through 6. So if some of you want to go to some of those places, that would be fine, because we're going to compare them all. And I'll probably need, what do I have here? I have the Luke. Let me get them in the Mark. Because there are subtle differences in them, if you will. And I remember several years ago, a guy making a comment to me about, he was reading a book about all the mistakes in the Bible. And I wasn't, it didn't sit well with me, and I don't think I really said anything. But as we compare the various accounts from Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they are subtly different, or they are different. And I once heard a sermon, and like literally decades ago, and it was a sermon on baptism, and one of his comments that stuck with me is, but in Matthew it says go out to repent and be baptized, I believe, in 26 or 28, 26, somewhere in there. And then in Luke it says obey, and then somewhere else, and they were like, well, do I have to obey? He didn't say that. Well, just because once it says it here, it also says it, we just keep adding on. So I don't know what the difference is, but I guess we'll go through it, and they're generally meaningless things anyhow. So anyhow, I know we got to verse 10, but we're going to back up because the whole thing kind of fits, In verse 5 in Matthew chapter 10, it says, these 12 Jesus sent out. Jesus sent out instructing them, go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And proclaim as you go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You have received without paying, give without pay. Acquire no gold or silver or copper for your belts, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics, or sandals, or staff, for the laborer deserves his food. In whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it, and stay there until you depart. As you enter the house, greet it, and if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. And if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet when you leave that house or town. Truly I say to you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. Okay. Now, in Mark, the difference is there. I mean, Mark is a little bit more abbreviated, but he charged them to take nothing for their journey except a staff. So, Mark 6, and this would be verse 8. Mark 6:8. So Mark 6:8, it charged them, take nothing for their journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts. But wear sandals and not put on 2 tunics. Okay. One says, don't take a staff. Is that don't take an extra staff? Or don't take a staff?
When I was reading the commentaries in my ESV study Bible, the comments that it had beneath Matthew chapter 10, the verses we've been reading, it said that the implication seems to be, and the easiest, the simplest understanding of this is when Jesus said, don't take any bag or extra tunic, that sandals or staff goes with the extra, with the word.
With the extra, okay.
That all of that's together. The word, and the idea was that they didn't have to sort of supply themselves, but they would be supplied by the work they did.
So, now does it say that they were allowed to wear sandals? And I think Mark says, but wear sandals. So,
included with the staff, in verse 10, in Matthew 10, it says, take no bag or extra tunic or sandals or a staff. So, no extras.
No extra.
No extra sandals, no extra.
So they're not packing a bag. They're not spending time packing a bag. But I'm sending you out and telling you to take no money, no extra shoes. And these would be sandals with straps, I'm assuming. Okay? You break a strap on a sandal and you're in trouble. Okay? Take no extra bag, no money, no extra sandals, no extra staff. Don't take an extra tunic. This would be like if in the night when it gets cold and if you're going to be outside, you could put on an extra tunic to be a little warm. Take none of that. Could you do it? Because I know. Where'd we go? Not long ago, we went somewhere. Susie had 3 coats in the back seat of my truck. I'm laughing at her. I had 2. We pack extra.
Now, I will point out, not by way of correction, but just by way of clarification, the tunic is actually like the shirt type of garment and not the outer clothes.
Yeah.
And so I think the implication is if your clothes get dirty, if your clothes get torn, you don't have an extra shirt to put on even, but you go and get that repaired or earn your keep and get a new shirt. And I think that's a little bit different from the coat. It's in a slight.
Yeah. No, I wasn't saying it was a coat. My understanding was it was an undergarment.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Basically, they're just being told that they're going to live off of the charity of others.
Okay. Which entails trusting God.
It definitely puts you if you don't have faith in what he's telling you to take care of you on your journey from point A to point B,
You're in trouble.
then you're in trouble. You have to have absolute faith.
I don't know how I got this so out of order already. All right, we'll slip up here. Okay. You have to trust God. Now, I didn't find anywhere where it said how long they were gone. You know, I don't know whether this was a few days or a few weeks. In Deuteronomy 29:5, and I didn't write the whole verse because I don't really know that. If somebody wants to look it up and read it, that's fine. Deuteronomy 29:5. And basically God is talking about, or saying, or maybe, I don't, anyhow, about in the Exodus. I need it. Who's got 29:5 in Deuteronomy? Because it's just going to make it easier.
And I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes are not waxen old upon you, and thy shoe is not waxen old upon thy foot.
Okay, so this is God saying, is this God speaking through Moses? Are we okay with that? So for 40 years, their clothes didn't wear out. Their shoes didn't wear out. Now, as long as I was wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, I'd be okay wearing the same clothes every day for 40 years. Hang on, let me see if I have it. I think in one of the translations, maybe that's the verse, it said, your feet did not swell. I have delicate feet. I have high arches. They're not delicate feet, but I have high arches. If my arches aren't supported, my feet hurt. I know when my boots are worn out at work, not because the steel toes got a hole kicked in it or anything like that, because the support under my feet no longer support my arches. Now for 40 years, these guys didn't have that trouble. I don't know, ever read anything about running shoes, but they're like, you need to throw your running shoes away very quickly, really, within a few months. You know, they would, I think they track miles, but, you know, anyhow, we have example of God taking care of them in the Exodus. 40 years. Their clothes didn't wear out, their shoes didn't wear out.
I actually have a slight example of that because back during the pandemic, when we were all doing our remote church here, I was walking like almost constantly, just walking and walking and walking. My Fitbit clocked like 20,000 steps, you know, almost every day because I was just constantly walking. And I had bought a pair of shoes, I think a month before lockdown. And then, you know, 6 months, 9 months in, something like that, I told my mom, I'm like, you have to get new shoes. And she said, there's no way you need new shoes. And I turned them over and showed her the bottoms of them. And there was no tread left on them because I had just spent that much time on my feet walking. And she said, yeah, I guess you're going to need new shoes. It doesn't take very long if you're using something like that for them to wear out.
Yeah. So you know, they have the example here of the Exodus. Don't take anything. Now, you know, did they remember that? I'm pretty sure they probably did. But it's still, these guys are really relatively new. They were chosen from all the disciples. These 12 were chosen. But like we're not way into the we're not years into the ministry.
No, and it's a good frying pan into the fire to test the faith.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how uncomfortable is it for us? Like, we go on a trip, we went to Maine. I mean, we packed the griddle pan. We had more coats than you'd see if you You want to be prepared, but what is the lesson I think he's trying to show them, because he knows what they're going to encounter after he dies on the cross, and and then their work begins. But this is just a test for them. This is it's just a step into what they're going to be doing.
How much of an example was it to them for when the church began, and they immediately started in with the days after Pentecost, people are finding needs within the believers and turning over their goods to be sold so that they can feed people.
Yeah.
Instead of turning over property, maybe even their inheritance, their lands to be sold so that they can feed believers to take care of one another.
And in Luke, like he sends out the apostles, and then we have a small piece about Herod is perplexed by Jesus. Jesus feeds the 5,000. I guess I got a couple pages in here. But, we're talking chapter 9 in Luke where he sends out the 12. And in chapter 10, he sends out the 72. One of the things about sending out the 72 is I think they return in chapter 11 of Luke. And they're amazed. Like, where is it?
Oh, it's still in chapter 10.
Is it still in 10 when they come back?
Yeah, it's in verse 17 of chapter 10.
Okay, yeah. So in 17, the 72 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons were subject to your name. And he was like, to a certain degree, he was like, duh. You got to figure, he was like, well, yeah. But imagine, you have this authority. You have the authority to drive out demons. I'm not trying it. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not trying it. Now, if Jesus walked in here and said, I give it to you, all right, I'd try it. But imagine trying it.
I haven't met a demon I need to cast out.
I mean, face it. In all honesty, we should be afraid of demons. We should, I'm not a big Halloween guy for this very reason. I don't do scary movies for this very reason. So he gives them the power to send them out, to cast out demons, to heal the sick, raise the dead. And this is another one of those places where between the three accounts, we get slightly different variations of heal the sick, and then there's heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out demons. But, if you're basically fairly new. Now, granted, you're hanging around Jesus, so you've seen things that other people haven't seen. He's seen at least a couple of them have seen him raise the girl from the dead by this point. Heal the woman with the issue of bleeding. There's been other miracles?
Walk on water.
Already? No, already, like at this point, in Matthew's account.
I mean,
Okay, so you know.
Yeah, and then there's just passages where, like in chapter 8, it says there were many who were healed. Where it's like we don't know how many times it happened. It just is many.
So they have seen this. So they know this isn't. They know this isn't Frankie in front of them going, "Hey guys, why don't you go do this?" They know that it's not me. It's from God. You know, and Jesus tells them, "Freely you have received this gift, freely you give this gift." We did the thing just a week or so ago about Simon in Acts. Yeah, in Acts, where he wanted to buy that gift, and they were rather irate with him, seemingly to me. As I read it, they seemed rather upset that he wanted to buy it, and they yelled at him, if you will.
But he got the point too, and he repented.
Yeah, he got the point and repented. It was, it's all good. We all make mistakes. I mean, we have all thought one thing, and later on found out it was something else. And we didn't all get this right at first, but maybe their sternness, if that's a way, maybe their harshness, maybe they were so direct with Simon because they had gotten a specific command from Jesus that said, "Freely you received this gift, freely you give this gift." Did you have to believe to get it? For them to heal you? Did he heal? Did they heal anybody who wasn't really a believer? We don't know. It doesn't say. So, but
As far as the examples we see, like the woman who had the discharge.
yeah. But I mean, I'm talking about on this journey, and even of the many that Jesus healed. I guess I'm taking it as. I guess I am. The way I'm looking at it as, he says, "Freely you received it, freely you give it." And
Is it perhaps that what you're trying to say is that the people didn't have to have like a sound biblical doctrine and
Yeah,
an exact
that's-
understanding of the scripture to receive?
or even really to a certain degree. I mean, I realized the woman on his way to heal the child, it was her faith. But of the many that Jesus healed, that they said, and he healed a whole bunch of other people. Those verses there. Was that also a tool to get them to believe?
I think you're probably right, but, in a way, I mean, I think for them to want to be anywhere near him, they have to have some kind of faith. But
Yeah.
maybe not so.
Because I'm kind of of the assumption. Not even anywhere near that. I'm kind of the assumption that part of the reason for the miracles was to prove authenticity. It was to prove I am from God. Because we hear them today.
Your faith.
Yeah,
See something.
but I mean,
Well,
like,
I think even if they didn't believe in Jesus specifically, they believed God was going to send a prophet or a healer
Yeah.
in And even the demons, whether it was faith is not the right word, but they had an understanding of who Jesus was when they try and bargain with him, like, please, don't send us out, send us into these pigs.
Yeah.
Which I'm not a demon, so I don't get that.
Yeah, there's a whole series of questions. Did they know that they were going to run into the lake and die? Or
What even is a demon anyway?
yeah, because there's too many questions there. So anyhow, but those miracles were used to give the stamp or I'm losing the word that I really want, the authority. It's not really the word I want, but it works. That it gave validation. Thank you. But it gives the validation that these aren't just ordinary, everyday guys. I remember, the name has just left me. Remember the people that were expecting the spaceship to come and they committed suicide? Heaven's Gate. Yeah. Okay. That's sad. It truly is sad. These people were so led astray that they committed suicide with rolls of quarters in their pockets to use in the vending machine on the spaceship. Now, there was a cynical part of me initially when that happened. It was like, come on, you can't use a Canadian quarter in a pop machine right now. What makes them think that an American quarter is going to work on a pop machine in space? But that was a rather, I would have to honestly say that was a sinful being flippant about their death. And it was wrong, but there was no miracle to back that up. They did something with no miracle to say that I have this authority, that I'm, to give that validation. Jesus and the apostles had these miracles for validation.
All right. To talk on one point from Luke,
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. Luke uses one extra word that isn't used in Matthew and Mark when they're talking about the 12 being sent out. Because in Matthew and Mark, it says that Jesus gave them the authority, but in Luke 9 and verse 1, he says when Jesus had called the 12 together, he gave them power and authority.
Okay. I think I like Luke's description a little better. Because, I can give you authority, and obviously it worked, but Luke just gives that description power.
It's like the difference between having the license to do it and having the actual equipment to carry it out,
Yeah.
At least in my mind. That's
I'm with you on the power, that extra word there.
Go on to verse 2, where it says, and he sent them to preach the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. It doesn't say believing sick, faithful sick. It just says heal
The
sick.
sick.
Of course, he does have the same restriction that the rest of them do. He actually doesn't mention it here, but the other two accounts mention that they were only to go to Jews.
Yeah.
So we know that was a fact.
Yeah.
But actually, that's interesting. I didn't notice that before I said it out loud. Luke actually doesn't mention the restriction to only go to Jews in his version. Interesting.
Which in Matthew, does Matthew say the house of Israel? Does he send them just to the house
the
of?
lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Yeah. Okay. So Matthew calls them the lost sheep of the house of Israel. It had been decades since Israel had been a country at that point.
Well, Luke tells them to preach the kingdom of God.
Okay. But they weren't a country at that point. But God still saw them as the country of Israel.
It's interesting too, because Herod is not nowhere near a legitimate king. He's not of the line of David. He's a puppet king and a vassal of Caesar.
Yeah. And he calls them the lost sheep of Israel. What is Jeremiah 50, verse 6? Because I know what Isaiah 53, 6 is, we are all sheep that have gone astray. I did this the other day. I said that, and then I couldn't remember Isaiah 53, 6. But Jeremiah 56.
My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have led them astray and caused them to roam on the mountains. They wandered over mountain and hill and forgot their own resting place. Whoever found them devoured them. Their enemies said, "We are not guilty," for they sinned against the Lord, their true pasture, the Lord, the hope of their fathers.
They were led astray by false teachers. You know, we are a truly blessed group of people. You know, everybody in here has a Bible, I think. I'll bet everybody in here has more than one somewhere. You know, I mean, I have 3 on my phone. We have no excuse, though. The one thing about it, one thing that comes down is we don't have an excuse for being led astray because, you know, we got into a discussion, I think you were in that with Austin, about translations. Were you there? Were you with us when Austin was here? We got into a discussion about different translations. And he was not a fan of the New International Version. All right. I understand that you have to be careful with the New International Version, I understand, I've been told, because there are certain years or translations that they have kind of edited. I don't know. But there are certain translations say things to me that other translations don't. And the one that gets me the most is, and I'm totally off my notes, they're just gone, is 2 Corinthians 5:21. And it says, basically, Jesus became sin, who had no sin, became sin so that we who were sin could be made the righteousness of God.
That's pretty close to the literal.
The last part of it, I know I've got right. That we could become the righteousness of God. I have a hard time with that. I'll just be honest with you. That phrase, I feel, to me, sinking into my thin gray matter, it seems that it puts me on a level with God. Now, the easy read version says that we will be made right with God. I understand that a whole lot better. That I get. Okay? So when the Israelites were led astray by bad teachers and let roam on the mountains to be devoured by those, they didn't have what we have. You know, like there were certain of these verses, because I'm doing it on the computer, that I can just hit a button and touch and bring up a bunch of different translations in a row. Because, the house of Israel, I was like, well, do all the translations say that? You know, So that, that God still considered Israel a nation, even though they hadn't been a nation in decades. All right, I'm going to touch on it a little bit, and I'm probably going to... All right, what does Jesus tell them to preach? I know Ethan touched on it some last week, or I don't know when, whenever I was here and you, what does he tell them to preach? In Matthew in verse 7 of chapter 10, it says, the kingdom is near. There's footnotes in my Bible, it's like has come or is coming soon. Mark says, repent of your sins and turn to God. In Luke 9:2, tell everyone about the kingdom of God. And in verse 6 of chapter 9, it says, preaching the good news. The good news is generally considered the Gospels, right? So it's not all come together yet. They're like the whole thing until the cross. It's not all. It's not a finished book, really. And now the real question is, when they don't accept it, what's he tell them to do? Shake the dust off your feet. And it'd be better for Sodom and Gomorrah. The shake the dust off their feet, when the Jewish people walked through a Gentile city, when they got to the other end, they would shake the dust off their feet so that they didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't want the dirt on their feet. They didn't want their dirt on their feet. This would be a very big insult to a Jewish town. For you to shake the dust off your feet. All right, who would be at fault? The apostles teaching or those hearing? Who has the responsibility?
Those who are not hearing.
Yeah. I like the way, yeah, because and I'm not sure, I wrote it down, I'm not sure where I fall in this. One of the online commentaries said it wasn't their job to change people's mind. It was to present to have a persuasive presentation of the message. And we got a couple minutes to dive into that.
You have to force someone to believe. They have to want to believe. There has to be some, even if they don't believe, there has to be some little part there that little nagging thing that says, I need to look more into this, right?
Okay. So then how important is our presentation?
Very important, according to the gospel, the New Testament. Because Paul says about his own teaching that he said, I'm not a strong speaker, and I just come to you with unpersuasive words, and yet you believe. So let me try and persuade you. when he's writing about himself, he says, well, we didn't follow cleverly devised arguments. We just told you what we saw. So our presentation just has to be honest, according to what the apostles taught. It has to be correct, but it has to be honest.
Okay. Can it be harsh?
If it's appropriate.
I don't know. I don't know if it can be harsh.
I mean, shaking the dust off your feet is pretty harsh.
But that's when you've rejected it.
That's true.
And I don't have it written down, but there's the verse when Jesus tells them when they reject you, they are not rejecting you, they are rejecting God. And I don't know if it's Jesus that says that or if it's God telling Moses that. Or maybe it's both, but it's you're not rejecting, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting God.
I would have to say probably our presentation probably would want to err on the side of not so harsh, because as long as we're being honest in what we're presenting, you can do that in a non-harsh way, because the less brutal you can make something, the longer you can keep someone's attention and interact with them. And that's how you actually get somebody to start thinking and have that nagging little spot in your head that says, well,
But you
maybe
might-
I want to look into that.
Okay. Where was,
I'm trying to find that verse that says you let your speech be seasoned with salt. I couldn't find it fast enough.
yeah. And there's another one. I've got them, like I write them down when I'm at work. I got legal pads with verses written. But I learn better if I write them down. There was something I was doing, and I forget what it was. I was having trouble with a bill of some sort. And Susie, at one point I was like, I was getting rather frustrated, and Susie said, "You catch more flies with honey." You know, she whispers, "You catch more flies with honey." And then flittered on about her way, and I went, okay. All right. The bell just rang, but I'm still going to go to it. Matthew 7:6. Because I think we need to present the message to the world. Don't get me wrong with this. And I think we need to do it with gentleness and respect, and I believe that's Galatians. Matthew 7:6. Somebody want to read it for me? I've got parts of it.
You have not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before the swine, lest they trample them under your feet, and turn again and rend you.
I think one of the things for me with that verse is that the longer I've studied it, the more the part that comes right before it, I think, is the partner to it. Because I always thought it was odd and almost opposite of the don't judge or you will be judged. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust when you have a plank? And then he says, don't cast your pearls before swine. And those almost seem like different, like opposing ideas, right? Like, well, I'm not supposed to judge my brother, but I'm also supposed to hold back what is precious and sacred and not give it to the unworthy. But it kind of isn't a contradiction either, because it reminds me of that. I think it's in Proverbs. It's right in the middle. It's like, I can't remember. But there are two Proverbs, one right after another, that says, answer a fool unto his folly, and it makes you a fool. And it says, answer a fool unto his folly, and you'll correct it. And they're almost contradictory statements, but they're one right after the other. And the point is, Jesus is giving us some wisdom that applies when it applies. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to have the discernment to apply that as much as we have to have the discernment of when to give correction and instruction, when it'll actually be heard. You know?
And, you know, like I've known guys that they truly wanted someone to become a Christian. And they would go see them constantly. And they never, ever, ever, ever responded. Is there a point at which you walk away? And I wait till the bell rang to bring this topic up, right?
I don't think you ever walk away. I just think you have to back off and regroup and give that person that you're trying so hard to work with a chance. I'm gonna say to breathe and say, okay, no, wait a minute. Maybe this or maybe that, you know. But I just think you have to back off and regroup and try again a different way. Yeah, yeah, find a different way, even if it's not through you, even if it's through something that they do or someone else that they respond to better than they do you. You know, you can do your works just like, you know, God, you know, I mean, it does these works through everyone. You know, so you try to put your works to work through a friend or a brother or a sister, a neighbor, a school kid that comes to mow your yard. You know, just
Well,
whatever.
I was just thinking about sometimes we undersell ourselves, we undervalue our own ability to present things. Sometimes we think we're doing worse than we do because the person's pride who's receiving the instruction from us or receiving even a good example, even almost kind of passively from us, might not be able, because of their pride or their own self-image, to turn around and tell you that. And it just so happened to read this verse from Proverbs, and Proverbs 20:14 says, it's no good, says the buyer. Then off he goes and boasts about his purchase. So you never know when somebody tells you, I can't do all that goody-goody stuff that you do. I can't be a Christian like you. How much they'll turn around and say, now if you people just act like, you'd be like these people over here. You know, if we had more of him in the world, we'd be doing better off. And you never know what people are saying in a positive way when they can't actually admit it to your face.
I just, basically it was a thought to throw out there, and it really threw out there late because we're now long. But
Well,
yeah.
Started late. We're just making up for start.
Okay. So, all right. I'm down to, I don't know where you want to pick up. If you want to, I think I got it, but I didn't get to the whole whether the house is worthy, leave your peace,
Not really.
or,
We kind of just got through verse 10 again.
yeah.
That's perfectly fine.
So, okay. All right. Because we truly care. Because we truly do care about one another. If we're going to sing a song of encouragement, a song of invitation, and I'm pretty sure everyone here is an immersed believer, but you may have a burden that is on your heart that you need the prayers of us, you need the cares of us, and if that's the case, then now's the time. Come forward. We can hold hands and make a circle and pray, or we could sit where we are and make a circle and pray, or sit where we are and just be in lines and pray. But we do care. You guys are important to all of us. So we're going to stand and sing
683.
683.